In 2017, nearly 38,000 people between the ages of 16 and 64 died by suicide in the United States. This represents approximately 18 per 100,000 people. In the year 2000, the rate was about 12.9 per 100,000 people. That showed a nearly 50% rate increase in less than 2 decades.
Suicide is a desperate attempt to escape suffering that has become unbearable. Blinded by feelings of self-loathing, hopelessness, isolation, or a host of other emotions, a suicidal person can't see any way of finding relief except through their own death.
Despite their desire for the pain to stop, most suicidal people are deeply conflicted about ending their own lives. They wish there was an alternative to suicide, but they just can't see one.
Suicide is a preventable public health problem, not a personal weakness or family failure.
Learning objectives. Using the handout or from memory, identify at-risk groups. Define the mnemonic device, is path warm. Name risk factors of suicide. Define the mnemonic device, ACT. State contact information for suicide prevention resources.
Identify at-risk groups. Several factors can increase the risk for suicide and protect against it. Suicide is connected to other forms of injury and violence, and causes serious health and economic consequences.
Suicide risk is higher among people who have experienced violence, including child abuse, bullying, or sexual violence.
Some groups have higher rates of suicide than others. Suicide rates vary by race and ethnicity, age, and other population characteristics, with the highest rates across the lifespan occurring among non-Hispanic American Indian, Alaska Native, and non-Hispanic white populations.
Other Americans disproportionately impacted by suicide include veterans and other military personnel, and workers in certain occupational groups like construction, the arts, design, entertainment, sports, and media fields.
Sexual minority LGBTQ youth bear a large burden as well and experience increased suicidal ideation and behavior compared to their non-sexual minority peers. Suicide rates by ethnicity. Suicide rates in Washington are highest among American Indian, Alaska Native, and white populations, consistent with national rates.
American Indians and Alaska Natives face severe historical trauma, high rates of poverty and isolation, cultural taboos around death and suicide, and lack of access to mental health care.
Among American Indian and Alaska Native youth aged 15 to 24 years, the suicide rate is 3 to 4 times higher than other American youth and is the second leading cause of death for American Indian and Alaska Native in this age group.
Suicide by age. Suicides of young people receive a lot of media and community attention, though Washington's suicide rates for adults are higher.
Men are more likely to die by suicide than women, but women are more likely to attempt suicide.
During 2012 to 2014, 77% of suicide deaths in Washington were males. Men 75 and older had the highest rate, while men 45 to 64 had the highest total number of suicides. National data has linked recent economic events to increases in middle-aged adult suicides, showing that external economic factors were involved in 37% of suicides.
Is path warm? Suicide prevention starts with recognizing the warning signs and taking them seriously. If you think a friend or family member is suicidal, there's plenty you can do to help save a life. Take any suicidal talk or behavior seriously. It's not just a warning sign that the person is thinking about suicide. It's a cry for help.
Warning signs of suicide. Most suicidal individuals give warning signs or signals of their intentions. The best way to prevent suicide is to recognize these warning signs and know how to respond if you spot them.
The section title is an acronym. It stands for ideation, substance use,
purposelessness, anxiety, trapped, hopelessness.
Withdraw, anger, reckless, mood changes.
This is what ispath warm might look like.
Ideation. Talking about suicide. Any talk about suicide, dying, or self-harm, such as, I wish I hadn't been born, if I see you again, and I'd be better off dead. Unusual focus on death, dying, or violence. Writing poems or stories about death.
Substance use. Seeking out lethal means. Seeking access to guns, pills, knives, or other objects that could be used in a suicide attempt. Self-destructive behavior. Increased alcohol or drug use.
Purposelessness, self-loathing, self-hatred. Feeling of worthlessness, guilt, shame, and self-hatred. Feeling like a burden. Everyone would be better off without me. Anxiety, trapped, hopeless. No hope for the future. Feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, and being trapped. There's no way out. Belief that things will never get better or change.
Withdraw. Withdrawing from others. Withdrawing from friends and family. Increasing social isolation. Desire to be left alone. Saying goodbye. Unusual or unexpected visits or calls to family and friends. Saying goodbye to people as if they won't be seen again.
Anger, recklessness. Self-destructive behavior. Reckless driving, unsafe sex. Taking unnecessary risks as if they have a death wish. Sometimes attempting to commit suicide by police.
Mood changes. Sudden sense of calm. A sudden sense of calm and happiness after being extremely depressed can mean that the person has made a decision to attempt suicide.
The following are some myths and facts regarding suicide. Myth. People who talk about suicide won't really do it.
Fact. Almost everyone who attempts suicide has given some clue or warning. Don't ignore even indirect references to death or suicide. Statements like, "You'll be sorry when I'm gone," "I can't see any way out," no matter how casually or jokingly said, may indicate serious suicidal feelings.
Myth. If someone is determined to kill themselves, nothing is going to stop them.
Fact. Even a very severely depressed person has mixed feelings about death, fluctuating between wanting to live and wanting to die. Rather than wanting death, they just want the pain to stop, and the impulse to end their life does not last forever.
Myth. Talking about suicide may give someone the idea.
Fact. You don't give someone suicidal ideas by talking about suicide. Rather, the opposite is true. Talking openly and honestly about suicidal thoughts and feelings can help save a life.
Risk factors. Suicide is the third leading cause of death among youth ages 15 to 24, and LGBT youth are more likely to attempt suicide than their peers.
CDC data from 16 states show that the most common circumstances around suicide include mental health problems, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder.
Physical health problems, chronic pain, terminal illness.
Trouble in intimate relationships, age-related or medication side effects.
Alcohol dependence causes a host of problems. Problems at work, either with coworkers, supervision, or both.
Cultural taboos about seeking help and appearing vulnerable.
Suicide among veterans. According to a report published by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, VA, in 2016, which analyzed 55 million veterans' records from 1979 to 2014, the current analysis indicates that an average of 20 veterans die from suicide per day.
It's down from the 22 a day we've been hearing about for so long, but it's still about 400% more than the population at large.
In 2018, about 7% of the population nationwide are veterans. About 13% of Washington's population has participated in the armed forces.
In 2010, the age-adjusted suicide rate among Washington veterans or active duty military members was 55 per 100,000, compared to 15 per 100,000 for those not in the military.
The rate of suicide was greatest in the first 3 years after leaving service. Compared to the U.S. population, both deployed and non-deployed veterans had a higher risk of suicide, but a lower risk from all other causes combined.
ACT. If you believe that a friend or family member is suicidal, you can play a role in suicide prevention by pointing out the alternatives, showing that you care, and getting a doctor or psychologist involved. A. Ask. C. Care. T. Treat.
Tip 1. Speak up if you're worried. If you spot the warning signs of suicide in someone you care about, you may wonder if it's a good idea to say anything. What if you're wrong? What if the person gets angry? In such situations, it's natural to feel uncomfortable or afraid, but anyone who talks about suicide or shows other warning signs needs immediate help. The sooner the better.
Talking to a friend or family member about their suicidal thoughts and feelings can be extremely difficult for anyone. But if you're unsure whether someone is suicidal, the best way to find out is to ask.
You can't make a person suicidal by showing that you care. In fact, giving a suicidal person the opportunity to express their feelings can provide relief from loneliness and pent-up negative feelings, and may prevent a suicide attempt.
Tip 2. Respond quickly in a crisis. If a friend or family member tells you that they're thinking about death or suicide, it's important to evaluate the immediate danger the person is in. Those at the highest risk for committing suicide in the near future have a specific suicide plan, the means to carry out the plan, a time set for doing it, and an intention to do it.
The following questions can help you assess the immediate risk for suicide.
Do you have a suicide plan?
Do you have what you need to carry out your plan? Pills, gun, blades, whatever.
Do you know when you would do it?
Do you intend to kill yourself?
Suicide threat level. Low. Some suicidal thoughts, no suicide plan. The person says they won't attempt suicide.
Moderate. Suicidal thoughts. Vague plan that isn't very lethal. Says they won't attempt suicide.
High. Suicidal thoughts. Specific plan that is highly lethal. Says they won't attempt suicide.
Severe. Suicidal thoughts. Specific plan that is highly lethal. The person says they will attempt suicide. If a suicide attempt seems imminent, call a local crisis center, phone emergency services number 911, or take the person to an emergency room. Remove guns, drugs, knives, and other potentially lethal objects from the vicinity. Do not, under any circumstances, leave a suicidal person alone.
Tip 3. Offer help and support. If a friend or family member is suicidal, the best way to help is by offering an empathetic, listening ear. Let your loved one know that they are not alone and that you care.
Don't take responsibility, however, for healing your loved one. You can offer support, but you can't make a suicidal person get better. They have to make a personal commitment to recovery.
It takes a lot of courage to help someone who is suicidal. Witnessing a loved one dealing with thoughts about ending their own life can stir up many difficult emotions.
As you're helping a suicidal person, don't forget to take care of yourself. Find someone that you trust, a friend, family member, clergyman, or counselor, to talk about your feelings and get support of your own.
To help a suicidal person, be proactive. Those contemplating suicide often don't believe they can be helped, so you may have to be more proactive at offering assistance. Saying, "Call me if you need anything," is too vague. Don't wait for the person to call you or even to return your calls. Drop by, call again, invite the person out.
Encourage positive lifestyle changes such as a healthy diet, plenty of sleep, and getting out into the sun or into nature for at least 30 minutes each day. Exercise is also extremely important as it releases endorphins, relieves stress, and promotes emotional well-being.
Make a safety plan. Help the person develop a set of steps they promise to follow during a suicidal crisis. It should identify any triggers that may lead to a suicidal crisis, such as anniversary of a loss, alcohol, stress from relationships. Also include contact numbers for the person's doctor or therapist, as well as friends and family members who will help in an emergency.
Remove potential means of suicide, such as pills, blades, or firearms. If the person is likely to take an overdose, keep medications locked away, or give them out only as the person needs them. This time-tested method is called being a pill monitor.
Continue your support over the long haul. Even after the immediate suicidal crisis has passed, stay in touch with the person, periodically checking in or dropping by. Your support is vital to ensure your friend or loved one remains on the recovery track.
Suicide prevention resources. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a United States-based suicide prevention network of over 160 crisis centers that provides 24/7 service via a toll-free hotline. 1-800-273-8255 or text 838-255. It is available to anyone in suicidal crisis or emotional distress.
What to expect? A trained responder will answer your call, text, or chat and ask a few questions. You can decide how much you want to share.
What happens when I call the Veteran Crisis Line? Dial 1-800-273-8255. You will hear this recording. You have reached the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, also servicing the Veteran Crisis Line. If you are in emotional distress or suicidal crisis, or are concerned about someone who might be, we are here to help. Please remain on the line and we will route your call to the nearest crisis center in our network. Attention! If you are a U.S. military veteran or current service member, or are calling about one, please press 1 now to speak with the Veteran Crisis Line.
Press 1. There will be a brief pause while the call is routed to the Veterans Crisis Line. A responder specially trained to support veterans and service members will answer your call and provide the support described above.
Conclusion. Suicide does not affect all communities equally or in the same way. Suicide prevention programs should be based on the best available research and practices.
Suicide prevention starts with recognizing the warning signs and taking them seriously.
Time can break